We're cranking up the broadcast, Patrick.
I'm tired today. I don't know why.
It's because we already did a half-hour show earlier. That's why.
That was just full fun.
That was easy. Patrick just had to ask questions, and I had to talk about myself.
Two of the things
I knew all the answers. I didn't have to study.
You hesitated on a couple.
Actually, there was one that I didn't know the answer of. You're right.
Have you watched all the second season of The Expanse, Tom?
No.
Yes, I'm caught up on The Expanse.
Okay.
I'm not.
I still get. I crammed in 2 more episodes last night, and so I'm on. So my next episode will be 8. I still give it a B, a solid B.
Oh, that's not bad for super hard.
Yeah, and for Roger, that's high praise. To be honest, he doesn't give anything an A.
Well, you do. It's just very rare.
Yeah, no, very rare.
So what's the last thing you gave an A on TV or movies?
TV or movies? I want to say Interstellar, but that was kind of that was a B plus. Part of it is just because I find Matthew McConaughey kind of an annoying actor.
Ooh.
Yes.
It looks like Disney is acquiring a majority stake in BAMTech. BAMTech is the new name of Major League Baseball Advanced Media, which is the independent company that has always done the baseball website and streaming, and also does streaming for HBO Now and other companies.
Wow. Disney is getting totally moving outside of their normal wheelhouse.
Wow.
No, I wouldn't say that. This is pretty much in their wheelhouse.
The streaming sports?
No, it's just it's the back end company that does streaming for lots of companies, not just sports.
They could easily start the streaming service of their own.
Also, Disney owns ESPN, so it's pretty
well. I mean, ESPN, but also Disney.
Yeah,
Netflix,
BAM also does NHL.
Not Netflix. What am I saying? Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel.
Yeah,
which could make for something.
I mean, this would allow them to more easily launch the ESPN streaming service that they've been talking about.
Maybe that's what it's about. I would pay $5 a month for Disney, Star Wars, Marvel channel.
I mean, this is from the WaltDisneyCompany.com. The Walt Disney Company announced today that it has agreed to acquire majority ownership of BAMTech LLC and will launch its ESPN-branded multi-sport video streaming service in early 2018, followed by a new Disney-branded direct-to-consumer streaming service in 2019.
Ooh, I wonder if this totally jives with yesterday's thing with the Miller World Netflix acquisition, in so much that there might be something afoot where Disney might slowly segue their content onto their own branded service.
That's exactly what they just wrote here, yes.
Well, they didn't go into Silverblade is saying in the chat room, Disney owns like half of North America at this point. He's not wrong.
All right. You guys ready?
I was born ready.
Control.
Oh, control. There you go.
All right, Heidi.
We don't have time to write up a thing for this, but I'm going to mention it.
You can mention it. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
The Daily Tech News Show is brought to you by its global listener base, not outside organizations. To find out how you can contribute, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Patrick Beja, host of so many podcasts at Frenchman.com. How are you, Patrick?
Hi, I'm doing excellent. Although, it's just 2 2 podcasts
So
at
many.
Frenchspin.com. So, but
So
that's
many.
still a significant amount, yes.
I guess there's also Frenchspin.fr. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Then you start getting into incredible.
Then you get so many territory. Yeah. Or not. What's the opposite of un peu?
Beaucoup?
Beaucoup. I knew that. Beaucoup podcasts. Hey, right before the show started, I saw that the Walt Disney Company has posted on their website. This is direct from Walt Disney, not a rumor. The Walt Disney Company announced today that it has agreed to acquire majority ownership of BAMTech and will launch its ESPN-branded multi-sport video streaming service in early 2018, followed by a new Disney-branded direct-to-consumer streaming service in 2019. BAMTech is what used to be called Major League Baseball Advanced Media. It is a streaming service that does a lot of sports, does MLB, it does Major League Soccer, does NHL, but it also does the technology behind HBO Now, for instance, and some other things. And the other part of this, Patrick, that's interesting is they actually wrote the most important parts of this story at the top of their press release.
It's almost like they want people to know what they're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen that way. So I was very appreciative of that.
Do you think that this is going to be ESPN first and then other Disney-related things?
Well, they say ESPN in 2018 and a Disney-branded direct-to-consumer streaming service in 2019. And don't mistake this, the ESPN-branded service won't be just ESPN. My guess is there will be things on ESPN broadcast that won't be on this service necessarily, but we'll see. They've talked about this being kind of a version of things that aren't on TV. But it will have Major League Baseball and NBA and all that sort of thing. So it's very interesting. All right, let's start with a few other tech things you should know. Wall Street Journal reports that Uber plans to close its exchange leasing program due to unsustainably high losses. TechCrunch confirmed it's considering a number of options, including maybe selling the program to a third party.
Unsustainably high losses. That's not a phrase you want to hear too often.
Yeah. But maybe somebody else can make a go of it is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't make it sound very appealing, framing it that way. Spotify arrived in the Xbox store for Xbox One users. It can play music while you play a game and features gaming-oriented playlists.
This is the leak. This is the reality following the leak where we saw Larry Herb messing around with it, and now it's for real. Google fired James Damore, the engineer who wrote an internal memo criticizing Google's diversity policies. CEO Sundar Pichai sent an email to employees saying the engineer had been fired because his memo advanced, quote, harmful gender stereotypes in our workplace. Damore told Reuters he would fight the dismissal and had filed a complaint with the U.S. National Labor Relations Board before the firing. This is a social and psychological issue. It's a science issue. It's a political issue. It's not really a tech issue so much. You should make up your own mind about how you feel about it, but make up your mind based on what he said in his memo. Go get the memo and read it. Don't just go on what you see in a headline. There are some key points to consider. The memo is critical of how Google is going about encouraging diversity. The author tries to say he supports diversity and remain even-handed. He even cites sources, but it also includes statements like women on average are more prone to anxiety and other women are kind of statements. Professor David P. Schmidt of the University of Michigan argues that the sex differences mentioned in the memo are unlikely to be relevant to the Google workplace, so there are things to criticize. But that aside, to be had in other venues, will it have an impact on us as users? And if so, Patrick, what do you think that might be?
I think the only impact might be an image impact, and that's kind of the most important part of all of this. It's how Google addresses issues, sensitive issues in the workplace, which could affect its brand and its brand image. Depending where you fall on that debate might depend how you perceive it. I don't think it's going to have any other impact, really. As you mentioned, it's not really a tech issue in a strict way. I would have a lot to say about it in a different venue, but I don't think it will impact users all that much.
Yeah, it's not likely that, I mean, there may be a significant boycott of Google out of this, but we've seen lots of boycotts like this sort of come and go from various sides. Against companies. I would not expect this to necessarily be that different. I don't think that Google looks like they're going to change their policies based on this, so I wouldn't expect any difference from that side of things as well.
No, and I mean there have been reactions on tech-centric forums on 4chan and stuff like that. But the other part of this this story is that it's happening in the middle of summer, and let's say it could have become a big story. I don't think that it will, and I don't think that it would have. But it happening in the middle of summer makes it even more unlikely that it would become a big like boycott type story.
It has been interesting to watch it. My job every day is to look at the trends in tech stories and say, okay, what are the things that are the biggest stories that everybody else is talking about? And I'm going to make myself address those. And what are the things that I think are interesting? And we'll add those for flavor. This story generally shoots right to the top of Tech Meme and kind of bounces around in Google News' own algorithm. And in other sources like our own subreddit, doesn't show up as strongly as you might think for something as controversial as this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The thing is, it becomes a topic of conversation when you want to talk about the nature of what the engineer is saying, which is controversial. But yeah, no, I don't think I'm restraining myself from talking.
I mean,
about
honestly, in this current climate, not to stray too far from the technology of the story, but this is not the only controversial statement or discussion being had out there. So I think outside of the Google and Silicon Valley bubble, it gets lost in a wash of other things like it that are happening.
Yeah. France, Germany, and others are working to close loopholes that are believed to have lowered tax bills for U.S. tech companies and inhibited European tech companies from gaining market share. France will impose simpler tax rules at an EU meeting in mid-September in Estonia. Companies are accused of shifting profits and costs to areas with the greatest tax advantage. The idea is to harmonize taxes between France and Germany by 2018, then push for wider harmonization with the other 19 members of the Eurozone.
So, I mean, is there a big problem? I look at this and I think, well, if the tax laws are X and a company takes advantage of those to spend the least amount of money and make the most profits, then the tax laws need changing, which is what France and Germany are proposing to do. Let's harmonize the rules so that President Macron wants to bring down the corporate tax level in France, but he wants other countries to bring theirs up so there are no more havens where you can go, like Ireland is the most famous one, where you locate in Ireland and then you try to show all of your profits in Ireland so they get taxed under the lower rate, and all your expenses in a country with a higher tax rate so that you show a loss in that country. And as long as you're not lying or breaking the law, I don't see that there's something wrong with that. But a lot of people think, they're getting around the system when they're just using the system. Or are they breaking the law? Are they sneaking around?
Well, I think most people agree that they're probably not breaking the law. There have been, it's a big topic of conversation. And when you ask, is there a problem? Yes, it's a big, big problem. Because obviously, the real nature of the problem is that legally, you can do that. You can, since there are tax, not even just havens, they're just, Ireland is one, and we discussed this actually in the latest episode of the Phileas Club with Bart, who is from Ireland and who's seen how much it has brought up the Irish economy and the Irish middle class, attracting big tech companies in their country thanks to that. But yeah, that's the big problem. They're going there and putting their they're not local dependent workforce in those countries that are part of the Eurozone, and so they're doing work in other countries from there. That's a very classic way of doing business. You take advantage of the best possible configuration you can get, and the key here is that until now, most people who have been attacking the issue have been saying, well, Google shouldn't do that, or Facebook shouldn't do that. They should have the people who cater to the French market in France. And obviously, that's just wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. And this is the first time that I've seen people seriously considering addressing the real issue, which is these disparities between the tax levels. And of course, it's 1,000 times more complicated to address because you have 20 some countries that are very attached to their tax rates that you have to sit down at the table and convince to harmonize all of this. So I don't know that it's going to happen easily. I don't know that Ireland is going to be happy to increase their tax rates anytime soon, but that's the only way that I can see this could be fixed. And it is, again, a very big problem.
The reason this isn't just a business story and it is a tech story is because one of the implications is that European companies feel they are at a disadvantage to US companies like Amazon and Google and Apple who come in and play this game. But the European companies could also play this game, no?
Oh, of course. And I think I'm pretty sure when they get big enough, they play that game too. It's not just about the competition between foreign and local companies. It's more the fact that the tech companies, since they work so much with immaterial services and products, have a much easier time delocalizing their workforce and putting it in Ireland when the work is being applied to services. So what usually happens is that they have a smaller team, a sales team in the local country, and everything else, engineering, customer service, is done in Ireland. And that's where the thing is difficult to reconcile, because the business is effectively happening with French customers, with, and so those two are separate. But
well, and I could also see if you're a small European startup and these big five rich American companies come in and set up this complex network, and you're like, I can't afford to do that yet. I can't afford to just have sales staffs in European countries and then put everything else in Ireland. And so I'm at a disadvantage because I can't get as big as them because I'm spending more money on my taxes.
I guess, that would be an okay point to make. I think it's not the main reason why the smaller companies can't get big enough. If there are, competition issues, there are other competition issues that might also be at play. But that's my
and President Macron wants to tackle those as well. He's trying to encourage investment and lower taxes for that reason. KGI analyst Ming-Chi Kuo has a good track record on knowing what Apple and Google are planning to do. And according to Apple Insider, Kuo says 3 new iPhones will be announced at the same time in November, launch on the same date, and all be available in 3 colors. The flagship phone, which you'll hear everybody call the iPhone 8, but that's not what its name is, at least not yet, is the one with the OLED screen, according to Kuo, and that one will have a limited supply. So all these things we heard about, and you heard me rail about delays previously on the show. It's not a delay because they haven't announced anything, but this idea of them having trouble with a successor flagship iPhone seemed to have resulted in just a limited supply.
Does that mean we're going to see a much higher price since they have limited supply? And it seems they've known that they're going to have a limited. I wonder if they're going to play it like, this is the special edition that we're only going to sell because it's to celebrate the 10 years of the iPhone, and it's going to cost $15,000.
Well, I think what Kuo says, according to Boy Genius Report story here, is that you've got a ramp up period. So it'll be hard to get at first, but then it'll go into mainstream production. So my guess is the pricing will be whatever they were going to price it anyway. That this isn't going to affect the pricing. It's just going to affect the availability, which is not an unusual situation for Apple products, to be honest.
Yeah. An alleged photo of the Google Pixel 2 was sent and published by GSM Arena. It shows curved glass, 2 LEDs in the flash, and stereo speakers on the front. No headphone jack was pictured. And they even say that the person who sent the photo is saying there's no headphone jack. So
I don't get too excited about these kinds of leaks because I'm like, all right, well, we'll find out if this is what it really looks like in a while. But sure, maybe it'll look like that. I also just don't get that excited about phones anymore. And this, sticker-laden developer version of the Pixel 2 isn't tripping my trigger. How about you?
I think the more interesting thing to me is whether or not this is going to have a headphone jack, because I'm wondering if this is actually going to become a trend after much despair from consumers, or if we're just going to have phones with headphone jacks and phones without. And
I have a feeling that flagship phones, forget Apple, flagship phones are increasingly going to not have a headphone jack because they want to make them slim. And if you can afford to buy that flagship phone, you can probably afford some Bluetooth headphones as well. And that's a trend we're already seeing because the iPhone isn't the only one that took away a headphone jack.
And so we're going to be living in a world where the haves have wireless headphones and the have-nots have to make do with those annoying wires to connect.
The have-nots are like,
devices.
I can plug mine into anything.
Exactly.
I have a headphone jack. I actually have a headphone jack.
The tables have turned.
Yes, once again. The group that copied data from HBO has released more internal data, including balance sheets, employee agreements, marketing strategy documents, and a script for the next episode of Game of Thrones, just like they did last week. Group demanded a ransom this time, though. The amount supposedly in the millions must be paid in 3 days, or this group will leak even more information. HBO is continuing to work with law enforcement and security firms. It doesn't seem like this is as embarrassing as the Sony Pictures hack from a few years ago because, again, HBO keeps saying they don't seem to have compromised our email system. But you've got contracts and pay scales and things like that leaking out now.
And I think even more important or potentially having more consequences than this is the personal information of some of the stars on the show, including phone numbers. And, that's the first time I've thought, until now, it's like, they're never going to pay. They're never going to do anything. And I still don't think they're going to pay. But if you have one of the stars of the show getting a phone call and going like, hey, dude, like, I'm the hacker. I have your phone number and I have all of your friends' phone numbers and we're going to release it. Have fun. Can that person call HBO and go like, dude, WTF? What is that's a very faithful recreation of what I believe the conversations would.
No, in fact, it might be.
And I wonder if that would prompt HBO to maybe do something. I still don't think so, but that's ironically, it seems to me like the biggest piece of leverage that they have, because what do you do in that situation? Do you actually ask all of these stars to change their phone numbers and to inform everyone?
I was going to say, the way the scenario goes in my head is this gets leaked. The managers of these people see that the phone number is there and go about probably what is de rigueur for them from various other leaks that have happened in the past. Like, sorry, Amelia, time to change your phone number again. This time it's the HBO leak that caused it. But even more so than just personal information, which I think is a concern, is also pay scale, contract terms, things that can give other agents of other stars leverage in negotiating contracts. HBO doesn't want all that out there either.
I'm sure they know. Like
there's a difference between knowing and be able to say, I saw the leak. You're paying Kit this much. My client needs this much now as well.
That is true. And, out of the leaks of Sony a few years ago came an actual collaboration between Marvel Studios and Sony, which gave us Spider-Man Homecoming. So maybe something wonderful will come out of the HBO leaks as well.
I don't know what that would be. More Game of Thrones?
Maybe HBO wants to work with Marvel to do another type of series.
It's always Marvel. It's always Marvel.
Always.
Well, folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes just to keep up, if you're like, I have a hard time keeping up, don't make that excuse anymore. Go subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines at dailytechheadlines.com. You will keep up every day, and then you can dive into DTNS on the days you have time and get a fuller discussion of the tech news. Daily Tech Headlines is available as a podcast. You can get it on Anchor, you can get it on Google Home, and you can get it on the Amazon Echo. Go check it out at dailytechheadlines.com. Now, Patrick and I were just talking about different things today, and you brought up the idea of the famous Bill Gates quote. He wrote it in the book The Road Ahead back in 1996. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. Don't let yourself be lulled into inaction. And as we're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, VR, AR, self-driving cars, kind of see this over and over and over again, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I really think it applies, obviously to tech, but it's really one of those brilliant quotes that give you a kind of shine the light on the way things are that you don't necessarily, because you're always, mired in the moment, in the instant, in the year, and you're thinking, you're not seeing with a wide enough scale. And this really puts things in perspective. And it's very true. Like, we tend to do this, especially in the tech world. We're so impatient when things don't happen in a year because the technology is there, because the technology exists. We're like, well, it's never going to happen. Or like, we're disappointed because it didn't happen after 18 months.
This is the year of VR. VR's dead. And it's like, well, no, this is the year we got 3 headsets and they sold okay. They're not great, but they'll sell better next year. You know, it's exactly it.
Yeah. So I think it's a really enlightening, Bill Gates has lots of quotes, I'm sure. This is one of his best ones, I would say. And interestingly, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg that mentioned it a few months back, and that's when I actually discovered it. And I think it's a great way of looking, especially when you're working in tech, of looking at how the markets evolve. And it's certainly something that the business people in that industry should keep in mind.
Well, so this is a good chance for us to take a step back. And this is something I like to do on Daily Tech News Show, is not just give you the trends as they're happening, but give a little overview and perspective on them so you can help to understand them. Patrick and I each have picked an example from the past of when this quote was true, where we overestimated what would happen in 2 years and underestimated what would happen in 10. Roughly. We're not holding ourselves to exactly those
it has to be
timelines.
2 and 10.
Exactly. So one example of it happened in the past, and our best bet of it happening again in the future. Patrick, what's your example from the past?
So it's, we were preparing the episode, and I was saying, hey, you know what would be fun if we don't discuss our examples, and so we discover them on the show. And you mentioned, but, maybe we're going to have the same one. And I was thinking, no, that's not going to happen. Well, guess what? So I had 2. I had sort of prepared for this. But one of my examples is the same as yours, so maybe we should start with that.
You mean my example from the past is bandwidth?
Yes. Yeah,
You'd picked bandwidth, really?
I picked data speeds in both mobile and wired connections. I mean landlines, because I think that's the most impressive one, probably.
That's so funny, because I thought, oh, well, this is one that isn't obvious. So Patrick probably,
really?
Not that you would pick obvious, but I was like, I'm going to try not to pick one that I think Patrick will pick. That's hilarious. Through my entire experience with covering tech, I have constantly run into this premise of, we're about to have a bandwidth crunch. When Netflix first launched their service for streaming, with their streaming service, it'll never catch on because there's about to be a bandwidth crunch where the data caps are going to crush us. We're not going to be able to have enough bandwidth. For 15 years, I've been hearing that bandwidth crunch is just around the corner. And at the same time, hearing that, but in 10 years, there'll be plenty of bandwidth. In 10 years, there won't be, we'll go through a bandwidth crunch, but in 10 years after that, bandwidth will be limitless. Everybody will have all the bandwidth they need.
It won't be a problem anymore.
Yeah, we just need to work through it, which is also wrong. It's neither. We never hit the horrible bandwidth crunch. We're always just kind of on the edge of comfortableness, right? Like, oh, I wish I had a little more. I can get what I need done. But we never get to that point of wildly wonderful availability.
Yeah, and it's the case in wired connection, but also in mobile connections. I remember only 10 years ago, the iPhone, the release of the iPhone is always a milestone, because of course that's when real bandwidth needs started on mobile. And the first iPhone didn't even have 3G.
Right.
I mean, 3G was around, but it was not so common that it was absolutely necessary. It was criticism for the first iPhone, so it was still it was common.
I remember spending the entire span of the Bay Bridge downloading a web page on my original iPhone because of Edge.
And I think we thought at the time, but 3G is gonna be ubiquitous, and we're almost gonna have 4G pretty soon. And it was like, we thought that 3G was awesome and that it was incredible and that it was going to be pretty much everywhere. And I guess on that end, it was real, but I don't think we could have imagined 4G 10 years later being as ubiquitous as it is, and now we're looking into 5G. And honestly, had you talked about actual 4G speeds to someone from 2005 or 2006, they would have thought you were insane, because most people, and no one almost, was getting those speeds at home with wired connections.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. In 2005, I was getting DSL at home, which was
exactly.
less than 1.5 megabits per second. So I can't imagine how I lived, but we did somehow.
I guess we managed.
Yeah.
Mine from the past is stretching that 10 years limit, but it would be speech and mostly handwriting recognition, which I remember seeing for 15 years maybe, and every time it was like, we're almost there, especially handwriting. I remember seeing in Japan of, I can't remember. There was like Dragon Naturally Speaking and a couple of others where it was like, we're almost there. Like, we can understand almost everything, and it's usable. Yes, you have to say something, but we're all, like, it always felt like 2 years down the line, they would understand everything.
In 1995, I was commanding Windows 3.1 with my voice. I had a program that would allow me to say, go to Program Manager, and it had to be trained, and it was a little clunky, but I was like, this is, in a couple of years, everybody will be doing this.
Yeah, and it was, it was almost keywords at the time, but it felt like it would be proper speech fairly soon. And I think a lot of people now are very frustrated with their virtual assistants,
their series
and all of this,
their Amazon voice services.
Let's not say the names. But the thing I think that people don't realize is that the recognition part of it, like the speech and even handwriting recognition part of it, works incredibly well. If you have an iPad Pro or a Surface, try the handwriting recognition. There's an app on iPad called BMO. Maybe I'm not saying the right name. Sorry. I want to say the name of the app because Nebo, Nebo. It is unreal. Like, my handwriting is horrendous, and it recognizes it almost perfectly. And that's the kind of thing we were expecting, kind of 2 years ago, when we were talking about it 10 or 15 years ago. But I don't think we thought it could realistically recognize. I'm not even trying when I'm writing this, and it still recognizes it.
Yeah,
and that's
crazy.
Probably, all of these are probably due to the leaps that we've had in deep learning in the past 5 years. But still, it's working, and that's kind of incredible.
Well, and that's the problem. And before we get to our future predictions, is we think in a straight line. We just can't help it. That's the way humans think. And innovation happens in an S curve. I've seen lots of other people say this. I'm not coming up with this, but innovation, creeps at the beginning and then has a hockey stick before it levels back out. And so when we're predicting in a line, which is why we're overestimating. We're like, why isn't it going fast? But then we don't account for the hockey stick, and we underestimate farther down the line. What's your future prediction of where we're doing this right now?
So there's a lot of future predictions that are pretty obvious, and I think one of yours is one of these, things that we all think of when we're looking at it. Mine, if I'm trying to go a little bit outside the beaten path, would be wireless everything. This is one of the technologies that we have seen around for a couple of years, and everyone is like, yeah, it's kind of working, and it's super. You have the enthusiasts, like the people who absolutely want to make it work and who try to have all their devices equipped with these kinds of things. And you had people who were using, I remember, what was it, Java wireless headsets a few years ago. Which
Jawbone, yeah.
No, not Jawbone. I can't remember. Maybe Jabra, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was okay, but it wasn't really to the point where it would be absolutely as handy as something that is almost that is wired, or almost. I think we're getting there, though. Not quite yet, but wireless charging is getting to a point where I think it's possibly going to be used a little bit more. And wireless audio. I mean, even Wi-Fi, when you think of it, only a few years ago, and I'm saying like 4 years ago, when you were doing a show, a podcast, especially in video, you would ask people to please be wired. Because
I would agonize if people didn't go wired. I would almost demand that they go wired. And now it's like, hey, could you go wired? If you can, it'll probably be okay.
Right.
You know, because Wi-Fi has sped up. We've got faster Wi-Fi than we used to, and the lag is less.
So Wi-Fi is obvious, but I think there's also possibly wireless charging and wireless audio. If we mentioned that lack of headphone jack on phones,
that's going to be a problem, and then no one will notice it's gone.
Exactly.
It's exactly what we're talking about. You know, paperless office is along the same lines. I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned wireless.
True. Yeah.
For a long time, people were the joke of the paperless office, right? And then suddenly you looked around one day, and you're like, oh, everyone's collaborating on Google Docs and Microsoft Office Online. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're, the older manager asks if, prints something, you look at them like,
or someone asks you for a fax, and you're like, oh, I guess people still do that.
I don't think people ask for. Well, okay, we're gonna get
real
close.
estate. Yeah.
But I think one additional thing for the wireless headphones, I think if AI develops enough that it understands it and understands what we want, just not what we're saying, it might accompany the development of wireless headphones, because it might turn those assistants, if we use them all the time, it's not going to be very practical to have smart speakers everywhere. It's much easier to have an earbud in your ear.
Something less obtrusive than the AirPods, one hopes, that can be just hidden in your ear, and then you can hear it. Or maybe it just goes on the outside, right? And it uses bone conduction, like Jawbone.
Maybe, yeah. And you need lots of battery as well. That's one that we didn't mention because I think it gets better, but it's linear. The
battery life, I think, it bucks this trend. We overestimate the change that will occur in all years, always, forever. That's the way it feels. But I know one day that'll be wrong. The new battery tech that finally works will happen. You just don't know when it'll be. I was going to say self-driving cars is a classical example in the making. Many argue that the true level 5 autonomy, where you don't need a human, is more than 40 years away. They're like, this is a lot farther away than people think. But when you talk about near term, people are like, oh, we're going to be having self-driving cars next year. You hear Elon Musk and Tesla saying, yep, by the end of the year, by early next year, we're definitely going to have these self-driving cars. And I think we're going to lag behind that. In the next 2 years, we're not going to see self-driving cars take over the road, but I think they will come faster than 40 years.
Yeah, even if they're not like completely level 5, you don't even think about where the wheel is. I think we will all be surprised in 10 years, or maybe not because people are listening to this show, but we'll all be surprised in 10 years how far the self-driving cars have come, because the infrastructure needs are definitely real. And you do need to have, if you're thinking in how cars work now, you probably need a big work on the infrastructure to enable self-driving cars. But if the AI evolves enough that it understands the world around it well enough, then it just looks at things around as we would and can drive the car. It's almost like deep learning enables speech and handwriting understanding, so it sort of enables that other technology. I think if AI evolves enough, then the needs for infrastructure in more cases is lessened. So
they are hand in hand. You're absolutely right. Because the fact that you can have them without any infrastructure changes right now is a testament to how far we've come with that machine learning. But people were thinking it was going to progress faster than it has. And in fact, companies like BMW and Daimler have announced alliances instead of continuing with their own solo projects. At first, every car maker was like, we're going to do a self-driving car project because this looks real. Looks like what Google was pioneering is real. Let's do it. And now they're saying, well, it might not make as much money as we thought. In fact, a German car maker board member told Reuters, he wanted to remain anonymous, he or she, but said, although it is a substantial market, it may not be worth the scale of investment currently being sunk into it, which is a classic example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll see what Elon Musk manages to do. Maybe he's going to keep pushing everyone and come out with products.
He's a one-man effort to prove this theory to be the exception to this rule, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com and in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. Real quick, Rolando, our fan from Paraguay, the heart of South America, thank you, Rolando, wrote in and said, I know your audience cares about privacy, and I thought I'd share my experience with mailvelope, a Chrome extension for sending and receiving encrypted mail. Once installed in your browser, you can create your private public key pair directly from the extension or import a previously created one. You can use it in Gmail and other webmail providers, and you can include other sites as well. It's easy to use, and it seems to be fairly lightweight. Highly recommended for exchanging private email with coworkers, family, and friends. Love the show, and I hope our collective support gives you the fuel you need to keep going. Well, thank you, Rolando. So far, so good. And this is all part of why we do it, so we can share these tips with each other. I've actually used mailvelope before, and it is one of the easiest encryption extensions to use. No encryption is dead simple for a lot of people yet. There's still little tweaks just because of public key issuance, but it's a really good one.
Yeah, I really love the name as well, because mailvelope sounds like a weird convoluted name, but when you think about it, the way they explain it is basically the emails you're sending are like postcards. Anyone can turn it around and read it. So what we're doing is we're providing an envelope for your email, and that makes a lot of sense.
Which makes a lot more sense than interpreting it like antelope, which is what I originally thought.
Although
it's so fast that you can't read it because it's an antelope. It's not even true. I don't know why I said that. Hey, thank you, Patrick Beja, for joining us. FrenchSpin.com, of course, to find all the great stuff that Patrick is up to these days. Anything in particular you want to mention?
Sure. I did mention the Phileas Club episode we just recorded a week ago. We had a number of different topics that we discussed, including a lot of American politics. But we also had interesting discussions about what's happening in Saudi Arabia and in Ireland, as I mentioned. So if you're interested in that, go to FrenchSpin.com. And if I may, if you want to hear about this awesome video game called Overwatch, go check out the Overwatchers podcast. You can find it in your podcast app. And we talk about that game, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Excellent. Hey, thanks to everybody like Rolando there, who makes this show possible by giving a little value back for the value you get from the show. That includes Alex Aguilar, Chris Crispel, Kevin Silverman, and many, many more. All we ask, folks, is if you're getting value out of this show, kick us $1 a month. That's less than 5 cents an episode, and it will make sure that this show stays on sound footing and keeps going. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv, and our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good convo, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun. Light-hearted.
But lighthearted, but at the same time, touching on a lot of things that I don't think we get a chance to touch on otherwise.
True. It was fun.
True.
What
What dare we call this show?
I tried to say at some point, but I'm the mother of dragons, when people were asking her to change her phone number, but I didn't get a chance.
Where are my voicemails?
Khaleesi doesn't change phone numbers.
Yes, Roger.
Spoiler alert, we can't predict the future of tech.
It's not quite the future. Well, I guess, yes, it is 2 years in.
Trender's game.
Trender's game. Man, Dark Redeemer's on these days.
Wham bam, thank you, Walt. Disney goes bam. ESP bam. Get it? Gender ender. Bandwidth gone the way of the ice caps. $15,000. The haves have crappy Bluetooth headphones. 3 texts forward, 2 texts back. I like Trender's game. There's also
Game's really good.
beginning of the trend and hacked box office. Although we've used that before, I think.
Oh, Trender's game?
No, the hacked box office. Something along those lines, I think.
Did we use that before?
I remember something similar being up when we were doing an HBO story, if not this year, late last year.
I apologize. I had the wrong link for Ming-Chi Kuo in there. I had the Boy Genius Report link instead of Apple Insider, which made Roger put the wrong one up. So that's my fault.
Tom's fault.
You, sir.
I'm fixing it in the show notes, though. And while I fix it, I won't be saying anything interesting.
No, so what's the... So which German, not official, but corporate speak body said that the investment was way too high for electric cars?
Isn't that an anonymous source?
Yes.
Because I'm wondering if he's taken the position of an existing car company, which might be true because you have a huge legacy supply chain you need to deal with.
If you look at my note, it says German carmaker board member anonymously to Reuters. And if you read the Reuters story, it says a board member of a major German car company who wished to remain anonymous told us blah, 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 blah.
So maybe they're trying to lull their enemies in a false sense of security.
Maybe.
We don't know.
I don't know.
Do they have dragons?
German car companies are looking down the barrel of new regulation, possibly.
Huh?
What
are you trying to say?
Oh, no. I'm just like, he might be him. He, she, it, they. The hive mind that spoke. Probably like 5 of them speaking together in unison.
Possibly.
I don't know. I mean, it's. I'm curious to know if that's speaking from a existing car company's point of view, versus like, oh, we don't have, we're not a car company, but we want to start one.
No, it's from a German automaker.
Yeah.
I mean, if you read the context of the Reuters story, basically what the Reuters story says is these car makers are starting to pool their resources because they're nervous about the return on investment, and so they want to share the risk around. And it's borne out with what they're doing. You're seeing car companies saying, "Hey, let's share resources on this research. We'll both benefit, but if it doesn't pan out as well, we're not sinking a ton of money into it." And so I don't think there's much else to that quote other than like, yeah, we're starting to think maybe all this investment won't pay off, so we're hedging our bets. I don't know that there's much else to it in this particular case, anyway.
I think it's easy to get to that conclusion when the thing is still in the early/middle stages of development. The thing is, if it starts bearing fruit and it's as big as people,
if we weren't seeing any other car companies teaming up, then I would say, oh, you may be right, Roger. There may be something else going on here. But what is being said anonymously looks exactly like what they're doing in public. It's just in public, they're not saying it's because they're worried about the investment because they don't want to spook their shareholders.
Possibly. I don't know. I'm just I'm cynical about stuff like that.
I know, and I appreciate that.
Well, part of it is that car companies have teamed up for decades on different things together. That wasn't necessarily. I mean, it was all about cost savings, but it was like, for example, GM and Ford co-produced a common transmission for their cars, and they run a factory together.
Oh, that's kind of what this is. It's about cost saving. It's like, we don't know if the return on investment is going to be as big, so let's save some costs. Let's develop together. You should read that Reuters article because I think it'll it'll put it in more context for you.
Apparently, Disney is saying it's going to pull its movies from Netflix too.
Oh,
Where are you seeing that?
I'm seeing it on CNBC.
Oh, those people with their reliable sources and journalistic ethics.
yep. And that's why
There
that
you
makes
go.
the
It's
whole
in the, I
motor.
put it in the chat room.
CNBC always has sources, though, not direct quotes. That's what they're good at. They're good at cultivating the anonymous source.
They're good at cultivating moles.
Hey, we are hearing someone play something.
Oh, sorry.
There's also plans to launch a branded Disney direct-to-consumer
Oh,
streaming.
no, this is actually Disney announcing during its latest earnings report that it intends to remove its movies from Netflix, so it's not a source at all.
Yeah, so I guess, that's what we
So
were.
it's not a source at all.
I don't think they can make it $10 though.
The
They would
branded
have to make it
direct-to-consumer
cheaper.
streaming service I mentioned on the show, that's in their
Right.
That's in their press release.
Yeah. So, well, I guess it makes sense if they have a branded thing that they would pull.
Netflix stock dropped more than 5% upon the announcement.
Yeah.
I mean,
But so does that
Netflix
mean,
has been preparing for this day forever.
of course.
The whole reason they started doing original content is they're like, guess what's going to happen? People are going to be less and less likely to want to license their content to us, so we need to have a really strong back catalog.
Sure. What happens to the Disney owned properties that have content deals with Netflix, like again, Marvel series?
Netflix said Disney movies will be available through the end of 2018 on its platform. Marvel TV shows will remain. So my guess is here, Disney said through the end of 2018 we'll contract to allow you to play our movies on Netflix, just like we do with HBO and Cinemax and everybody else.
Sure.
Separately, Netflix went into an agreement with Marvel to say, let's co-produce movies for Netflix, and we will have the rights to show them forever and ever and ever and continue to develop them. That's different than it's a Marvel Netflix co-production, just like it's a Marvel Fox or a Marvel Sony co-production.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you think that means they're going to start producing original content for their streaming service, though?
Yes. I mean, they already do. They produce original content for ABC, right? So why wouldn't they produce original content for a streaming service as well?
Are they the ones producing it, or are they
Yep.
contracting ABC to
they
produce,
own
or
ABC.
whoever?
ABC is owned by Disney, so 6
Oh.
to 1, half a dozen to the other.
Okay.
Well, they also have the Disney cable channel and they have XD, and they have a lot of.
So it's
places
not
to try.
that much of a leap, then, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is they own a bunch of channels already. So having a streaming only channel is just a different delivery method.
Really, what this enables them to do is kind of really wind back or come to negotiations with whoever cable. And I'm wondering if this is a play to like bypass movie theaters entirely in some cases for like first run releases and say, hey, just get it on our.
You're not going to forego the
Nobody's going to do that but Netflix for a long time. Even Amazon is backtracking on that and becoming more theater friendly instead of less. Yeah. Amazon is basically out there going, 90-day window is great for us. We'll totally do that.
in France we have 36 months.
I know.
For subscription VOD for between release in the movies, and it's insane. And that allows them to do is to not have to share.
I mean, what this really indicates is that production houses and content owners are deciding, hey, we make more money if we actually provide our content directly to the viewer rather than going through intermediaries. This is
cable
really bad news for cable companies.
Exactly.
It's less bad news for theaters because that's a different experience, and I think it will remain a different experience. But Netflix, Netflix is going to have to rely more and more on its own content, or smaller companies that don't have the distribution power who want to get a little extra money. But yes, CBS has been doing this since the beginning. CBS never gave its shows exclusively to anyone. Instead, they give their shows to everyone, and they keep their new shows only for themselves. So new stuff on CBS only shows up on CBS All Access, but back catalog will show up on Hulu and Netflix and Amazon.
Really, that's just extending what they used to do with their syndication model.
Yeah, and CBS is now, they looked backwards when they're like, no, we're not giving our new shows to Hulu. And they looked backwards when they're like, no, we're not giving our back catalog exclusively to anybody. But now they look super smart because they're making tons of money off their back catalog, and CBS All Access actually gets money because people are saying, well, that's the one place I can get whatever it is, you know, The Good Fight or Star Trek Discovery or whatever.
Soon they're going to start owning actors again. The studio system.
I think I'm going to get Star Trek Discovery at the same time as you guys.
You'll get it on Netflix,
but you get it on Netflix,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Take that, shit. America.
I got so caught up in talking about this with you guys that
I'm sorry.
Didn't notice my MP3 finished exporting.
All right, I'm actually gonna leave you.
Out.
Okay. Thanks, Patrick.
Publishing. Thanks, guys. Thanks, chat room. I love you. I'm looking at the chat room now. You can't, it's on that side. Bye.
Goodbye.